Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be looking at one of the most consequential
Oh,
figures in American history,
absolutely.
and someone who I think we all have some sense of, but I think there's a lot more to learn, and I
Oh.
think you're the perfect person to help us dig a little deeper
Well, we'll see.
into the mind of Donald Trump.
Let's give it a try.
So we're going to be looking at The Art of the Deal, his 1987
Right.
book, sort of part memoir, part.
Kind of a business.
Yeah, exactly. It's a
Think.
business philosophy book, and I think it's interesting to read it now from the perspective of,
Yeah.
2025, knowing everything that we know about Trump's
Right.
later career, and sort of seeing how much of that is sort of evident
Right.
in this book that was written,
Decades
ago. Yeah. So,
I mean, you can definitely see some
There's
threads
particularly, yeah.
of his personality and his approach
Yeah.
already kind of present there.
So just to start off, like, what is the art of the deal?
Well, I think at its core, it's this idea that, you have to be willing to think big.
Okay.
You have to be
Yeah.
bold. You have to be aggressive.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to kind of bend the rules a little bit
To get what you want.
to get what you want.
Yeah. And he really emphasizes that, like, from the very beginning, he contrasts his father's approach to business.
Right.
Fred Trump, who was a very successful,
A very successful developer in his own right.
yeah, like built, thousands of units of housing in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
And Donald Trump talks about how his father was happy with that,
Yeah.
Like, he was making a good living. He was providing for his family,
Right.
but Donald Trump wanted more.
He had bigger ambitions.
Yeah. He wanted to be in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to build skyscrapers. He wanted to put his name on everything.
He wanted to be a household name.
Yeah, and I think that's something that comes through very clearly in the book.
Absolutely. Is this relentless ambition,
Yeah.
this drive to be the best, to be the biggest.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
he kind of sees the world as
Mm-hmm.
a zero-sum game.
Okay.
In order for him to win,
Yeah.
somebody else has to lose.
Right. So it's very competitive.
Very competitive. Yeah.
Yeah. And that comes through in the way he talks about
Mm-hmm.
his negotiations.
His dealings.
Yeah. He's always
That's something that-
looking for an angle.
Looking for an angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always trying to get the best possible deal
Mm-hmm.
for himself, even if it means,
Even if it means
being a little bit
pushing the boundaries.
pushing the boundaries. Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that he talks about a lot is
Mhm.
leverage,
Leveraging.
like using leverage
Yeah.
to get what you want. And he gives this great example
Oh, yeah.
of the Commodore Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
This was in the late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
New York City was in a really bad place.
Mm-hmm.
Times Square was a very different place than it is today.
Yeah.
It was very seedy,
Mm-hmm.
and the Commodore Hotel was this kind of
Dilapidated.
like almost bankrupt
Mm-hmm.
hotel right next to Grand Central Station.
Right.
And Trump saw an opportunity.
He saw potential.
Yeah, he saw potential, but he knew that he couldn't do it alone.
Right. He needed help from the city.
Yeah, he needed a tax break from the city.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of orchestrated this whole situation where
Yeah.
he got the owners of the hotel to publicly announce
Right.
that they were going to close the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were going to board it up,
Yeah.
and it was going to become this blight
Right.
on the neighborhood.
An eyesore.
Yeah, an eyesore right next to Grand Central Station.
Right in the heart of Manhattan.
And so he basically put pressure on the city.
Yeah. He created a sense of urgency and leverage
Yeah.
to get them to give him the tax break that he wanted.
Right, and it worked.
It worked.
He got the tax break. He was
Yeah.
able to renovate the hotel.
Partnered with the Hyatt.
Yep, partnered with Hyatt,
Mm-hmm.
turned it into the Grand Hyatt,
Mm-hmm.
and it became a huge success.
And it revitalized that whole area.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it shows,
Okay.
how he's willing to use these kind of
Unconventional tactics.
unconventional tactics. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, it's not just about, going in and making a rational argument.
Mm-hmm.
It's about
Playing hardball.
playing hardball.
Yeah.
Yeah, creating
It's a situation that benefits you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he's very upfront about that in the book.
Oh, yeah. He's very transparent about
Yeah.
the methods.
And one of the other things that he talks about is this idea of protecting the downside.
Protecting the downside.
Like, he says that, he's not a gambler.
He doesn't like to gamble.
He doesn't like to gamble. He likes to own the slot machine,
Right.
not play the slot machines. And so he's always looking for ways to
Minimize his risk.
minimize his risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, to make sure that even if a deal goes bad, he's not going to lose everything.
Right.
And he gives a lot of examples of how he's done that in his career. But then it's interesting because he also talks about the USFL.
The USFL, right.
Which is kind of a case where he
went against his own...
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got involved in this new football league, the United States Football League.
Right.
And he
saw it as a way to
challenge the NFL.
Challenge the establishment.
Yeah. And he put a lot of money into it.
Yeah. Bought a team.
He bought a team. He signed big-name players.
Tried to get it on television.
Yeah. He even sued the NFL.
Yeah. Launched an antitrust lawsuit.
And it was a huge gamble.
Huge gamble.
And it didn't pay off.
It backfired.
Yeah, the league folded.
Yeah.
The lawsuit failed. And Trump admits in the book that it was a mistake.
A rare misstep for him.
So it's interesting to see that even someone who's as successful as he is can make mistakes.
Can miscalculate.
Can miscalculate, yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, those instincts lead you astray.
Don't always pan out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that he talks about a lot in the book is this idea of
knowing your market.
Knowing your market.
Yeah.
And he says that he doesn't really believe in traditional market research.
He relies more on his gut.
Yeah, he relies more on his gut. He talks to people.
His intuition.
Yeah, he talks to cab drivers. He talks to doormen.
Yeah.
He talks to...
He talked to everybody.
Everybody. He just wants to get a sense of...
what people are thinking.
What people are thinking, what they want.
What they want.
What they're willing to pay for. And he also has this real attention to detail.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to appearances.
Aesthetics.
Yeah.
Creating a sense of luxury.
Creating a sense of luxury. And he talks about this a lot in the context of his early project, Swifton Village.
Yeah.
Which was this big apartment complex.
In Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati, yeah. And you wouldn't think that, you know, an apartment complex in Cincinnati would be like...
the most glamorous project.
The most glamorous thing in the world. But he really dives into...
He gets into the weeds.
The details.
Yeah.
Of, you know, upgrading the door styles, landscaping, making sure that everything looks... pristine and perfect.
Yeah.
And he even tells this story about Irving,
the property manager.
The property manager, who is this kind of...
shady character,
right. But very effective.
Yeah, he got things done.
Yeah, he had these hands that Trump describes as like...
lethal weapons.
Yeah. And he knew how to deal with tenants who were behind on their rent. And he knew how to...
keep things running smoothly.
Keep things running smoothly, yeah.
Yeah.
And Trump kind of admires that.
He respects that, even though he acknowledges that Irvin was...
even though he was...
not always on the up and up.
Not always on the up and up.
Yeah.
But he got results.
And
that's what matters to Trump.
That's what matters.
So it's this interesting kind of pragmatism that he has where, you know, he values appearances.
Yeah.
He values doing things the right way. But he's also willing to...
look the other way. Yeah.
If someone is...
if they're delivering.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into another key principle of his, which is...
delivering the goods.
Yeah. Like, he says that you can calm people.
You can't fool people forever.
For a while, but you can't...
you have to actually deliver.
You have to actually deliver.
Yeah.
You have to actually produce something of value.
You have to have substance behind the height.
And he contrasts himself with...
he talks about Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Who he met.
After Carter had left office.
Yeah. And he was asking for donations.
For his presidential library. Right.
And Trump was surprised because he thought...
he thought Carter was a
failure as president?
The failed president.
Yeah.
Right.
And he couldn't believe that he had the audacity to ask for money.
Yeah.
He kind of contrasts that with
Reagan. Who he saw
as a master presentation.
Yeah. All style.
Yeah, all style. But not a lot of substance.
And
I think that's something that, you know, Trump really prides himself on.
Yeah.
Is that he's not just a showman.
Right.
He actually delivers. He actually builds things.
He gets things done.
Yeah, he gets things done.
Yeah.
And speaking of aesthetics and presentation, he definitely has strong opinions about design. Yeah. Very strong opinions.
And he talks about this a lot in the book.
Yeah.
He talks about how he clashed with preservationists over the Grand Hyatt Hotel.
Right.
Because they wanted him to
preserve the original facade
of the Commodore Hotel,
which was this kind of
Beaux-Arts,
yeah, style building. And he wanted to modernize it. He wanted to put this mirrored glass facade on it, and they thought that was sacrilege.
Yeah.
And he basically argues that his design was better.
He thought it was an improvement.
Yeah, he thought it was an improvement and that it actually enhanced the surrounding
neighborhood.
Yeah. And it's true that the Grand Hyatt became a very successful property.
It did.
So I think it's interesting to see how he...
Sometimes he's right.
Sometimes he's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's not afraid to...
Challenge conventional wisdom.
And
to push for what he believes in, even if it means,
facing criticism. Yeah.
And I think that's something that we see throughout his career.
Absolutely.
Is this willingness to
go against the grain.
Be a
contrarian.
Yeah. But perhaps his most iconic project.
Yeah.
The one that really
cemented his reputation
as a builder.
Yeah.
Is Trump Tower.
And
he talks about this in great detail.
Yeah. And
walks you through.
Yeah, he walks you through
the whole process.
Of how he acquired the land, how he negotiated the air rights. How he maximized
every square inch
of the building. And he tells this great story.
Oh, yeah.
About his encounter with Walter Hoving. Who was the chairman
of Tiffany & Co. Yeah.
And he wanted to buy the air rights above Tiffany's
flagship store. And Hoving was initially very resistant.
Yeah, he didn't want to sell.
Yeah, he didn't want to sell to Trump. And so Trump had to really use all of his
powers of persuasion.
Yeah, he built these architectural models.
Yeah.
He made this whole presentation.
He laid out his vision.
Yeah, he laid out his vision, and he basically convinced Hoving
that it would be good for Tiffany's?
That it would be good for Tiffany's.
In the long
run.
Yeah.
And so he got the air rights.
He got the deal.
And he was able to build Trump Tower.
Yeah.
And it became, this
icon
of New York City.
It was New York City, yeah.
Of the 80s.
And it really, I think, established him as a major player.
As a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. In the real estate world?
Yeah. In the world of New York real estate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting because it shows, his ability to understand people. And to tailor his approach.
Yeah, to tailor his approach.
To get what he wants.
And I think that's something that we see throughout his career.
Oh, absolutely.
Is this ability to
read people.
To
figure out.
Yeah, to figure out what motivates them.
Let them tick.
And then to
use that.
To
his advantage.
Yeah. So, it's fascinating.
It's fascinating, yeah.
Really is.
And I think, as we go through the book, we'll see more and more examples.
More and more examples of
and how he kind of
honed his skills. As a negotiator.
As a deal maker.
As a manipulator. Yeah.
Of people.
And then how that ultimately
led him to where he is today. Yeah.
So
it's quite a story.
It is quite a story. Yeah. So stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
After the break.
And speaking of Trump Tower, there's this interesting thing he says about the Art Deco sculptures.
Oh, yeah.
That were on the Bonwit-Teller building.
Right.
Which he demolished.
To make way for Trump Tower.
Yeah, to make way for Trump Tower. And he talks about how, he had promised to preserve these sculptures.
Right.
And donate them to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And then...
They ended up being destroyed.
Yeah, they ended up being destroyed. And he kind of blames it on the demolition contractor.
Right.
Saying that
it was too difficult.
Yeah, it was too difficult and too expensive.
To remove them safely. Yeah.
But it created this huge controversy.
It did. A lot of bad press.
Yeah, a lot of bad press for him.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I think, cemented this image of him as someone who was... Ruthless, yeah, and didn't really care
about history or
art or
preservation,
yeah. And it's interesting because it's one of the few instances in the book where he kind of
expresses regret.
Yeah. He says that, looking back, he wishes he had handled it differently. But then he also says that
all the publicity
to
help to sell
the apartments
yeah,
in Trump Tower.
Ew.
So it's like
he's got this kind of
he's almost proud of...
He's trying to spin it
Spin it, yeah, as like
a positive thing.
As a positive thing.
Even though it was clearly a negative situation.
So it's this weird kind of contradiction.
It's full of contradiction.
Yeah, and I think that's something that
we see throughout
his career.
Yeah.
Is this kind of ability to sort of
kind of
the two opposing views
in his head at the same time.
Yeah, and kind of justify anything.
But justify anything. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that he talks about a lot in the book is
his disdain for
bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy, yeah.
And government incompetence. And he gives this great example. Of the Woolman Rink.
The Woolman Rink, yeah.
Which was this ice skating rink in Central Park.
Right.
That the city of New York had been trying to renovate.
For years.
And they had spent millions of dollars.
And
they were just completely failing.
They couldn't get it done.
Yeah. And Trump basically stepped in.
Yeah. He offered to do it.
He offered to do it for free.
Yeah,
and on time and under budget. And he did.
He did.
Finished it in like 6 months.
Yeah.
And it was a huge
public relations coup.
PR coup for him, yeah.
Yeah.
And it really kind of cemented this image of him.
As a man of action. Yeah. As someone who could
get things done.
When the government couldn't.
When nobody else could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to think about how that
narrative
kind of played out
later on
in his
political career.
Yeah, because he really sort of
tapped into that
sense
frustration
with government.
Yeah.
And this idea that
he was the outsider.
He's the outsider who could come in and fix things.
Who could get things done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing that the book really kind of gives you a glimpse into is Trump's
personal life,
yeah.
His lifestyle.
He talks about his apartment.
His lavish apartment
in Trump Tower.
Yeah.
He talks about his
private jet.
His yacht.
His
helicopter.
Yeah, he loves to flaunt his wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's very
unapologetic about it.
Yeah. And he sees it as
a sign of his success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he talks about how,
he deserves it.
He's worked hard for it.
He's earned it.
And he's not going to apologize for it.
Right. Yeah. And he's not afraid to.
Yeah. And he's not afraid to
show it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, really kind of resonated with
a certain segment.
A certain segment of the population.
Yeah.
Who kind of admired that.
That aspiration.
An aspirational
style. Yeah.
But it's also something that
turned off a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
a double-edged sword.
Yeah. But it's interesting because even amidst all this talk of opulence, there are moments where he kind of shows
a more pragmatic side.
Yeah. Yeah. He talks about how he initially didn't want to make the Fifth Avenue entrance to Trump Tower.
Right.
So
because he thought it would.
Yeah, he thought it would
take
away from the retail space.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was overruled by the city.
By the city planners.
Yeah, and he eventually came to appreciate
the
impact of that grand entrance.
Yeah.
And how it kind of
created a sense of awe.
And
grandeur.
Yeah. So it's like he's not just immune.
The bottom line.
The power of aesthetics.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back, and I think one of the things that really stands out to me about The Art of the Deal is that it's not just a book about business. It's also
it's
also about Trump's personality.
Yeah, it's a glimpse into his mindset.
And one of the things that I find really fascinating is that he presents himself as this very shrewd, calculated businessman.
Right.
But then he also talks about how sometimes he just goes with his gut.
He trusts his instincts.
Yeah. And sometimes that leads him to make these decisions that
seem kind
of crazy.
Impulsive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they often turn out to be brilliant.
They work out for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the best examples of that, I think, is
Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was this incredible estate in Palm Beach.
Right.
That had been owned by the Post family.
The Post Foundation.
Yeah, the Post Foundation.
Yeah.
And it had been on the market for years.
They were having trouble selling it.
Yeah. And they had actually accepted higher offers
from other buyers.
Yeah. But those deals had fallen through.
For various reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Trump comes in and he offers them
a much lower price.
A much lower price, like significantly lower.
Yeah.
And they take it.
And they take it.
And even Trump admits in the book
that he got a steal.
He got a steal. Yeah. It was like the deal of the century.
It was an incredible deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just shows, you know, his ability to
sense an opportunity.
It's an opportunity.
When somebody is...
Yeah, and to know when someone is desperate to make a deal.
To get rid of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to capitalize on that.
He's not afraid to pounce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that he talks about a lot is...
walking away.
Walking away from a deal.
Yeah.
If it doesn't meet his criteria.
If it's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says that that's one of the most important things.
One of the most important negotiation
skills you can have.
Yeah, is to be willing to
walk away.
To walk away. And he even applies that to personal relationships.
Right.
He tells this story about a friend of his from Texas who tried to get him involved in an oil deal.
Yeah.
And initially, Trump was interested.
But then he had second thoughts.
He got a bad feeling.
Yeah, he just didn't feel right about it.
Yeah.
And so he pulled out of the deal.
He walked away.
And it turned out to be a wise decision.
Because the oil market.
Because the oil market crashed.
Yeah.
And his friend lost everything.
Yeah, all of his investors lost their money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good reminder that sometimes the best deals are the ones you don't make.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to walk away.
Yeah. And he also talks about how sometimes he enjoys
the challenge of
a difficult negotiation.
About outsmarting somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it means outsmarting people who are close to him.
Oh, yeah.
And he tells this funny story about the Plaza Hotel manager.
Yeah.
So he and Ivana had bought the Plaza Hotel.
Yeah.
And they were constantly meddling.
In the operation.
In the operations, yeah.
Even though it was supposed to be.
They were driving the manager crazy.
Managed by Hyatt. Yeah, they were constantly.
With their suggestions and their demands.
Giving their input.
Yeah, and so the new manager.
Came up with this plan.
Came up with this brilliant plan.
Yeah.
To get them to back off.
To basically shut them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so instead of pushing back directly. He just started overwhelming them.
With decision.
With decisions. Yeah, like every little detail.
Yeah, like what kind of wallpaper should we use? Yeah. What should be on the menu? What kind of flowers should we have?
Yeah, just like these...
Just these minor decisions.
Fewer decisions that
he didn't really need their input on.
Didn't really need their input on, but he just kept...
He just kept asking them.
Asking them and asking them and asking them.
Over and over again.
Yeah, and eventually Trump and Ivana were just like...
We can't deal with this.
Yeah, we can't deal with this. Just handle it yourself.
Just do whatever you want.
Yeah. And so the manager basically outsmarted them.
By giving them exactly
what
they want.
What they thought they wanted, which was control.
But it was actually just a way to get them to back off.
To back off.
Yeah.
It's a really funny story.
It's a great story.
And it just shows, you know, Trump's kind of...
His willingness to be
manipulative.
Manipulative, yeah.
And to sort of use whatever means necessary.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, to get what he wants.
To get what he wants.
So I think as we wrap up this deep dive into the art of the deal, you know, one of the key takeaways, I think, is that Trump is a master of self-promotion.
He understands the media.
He understands the media.
He knows how to use it.
He knows how to use it.
To his advantage. Yeah.
He's also incredibly tenacious.
He doesn't give up.
He doesn't give up easily.
Yeah.
And he's willing to fight for what he wants.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps the most important lesson from the book.
From the art of the deal.
Is the importance of...
Thinking big.
Thinking big.
Yeah.
Being bold.
Being bold.
And always striving to win.
And never giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, as you reflect on this book and the insights that we've discussed, I think it's important to consider
how these principles
might apply to your own life.
To your own life, yeah.
To your own career.
To your own negotiations.
To your own negotiations.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to think about
the ethical implications.
The ethical implications, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think Trump's approach is very much...
About winning at all costs.
About winning at all costs. And sometimes that means...
Bending the rules.
Bending the rules.
Or even breaking them.
Yeah. And so I think it's a good opportunity to kind of reflect on...
Your own value.
Your own values.
And where you draw the line.
Where you draw the line.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the art of the deal.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
I hope you found it insightful.
I hope you learned something.
I hope you learned something, and
I hope
you'll
join us again.
Join us again for another deep dive.
For our next deep dive.
Yeah.
Yeah.